Terrington St Clement sits on the edge of what was once a vast, treacherous wilderness of salt marsh and tidal creeks that stretched between the old coast of Norfolk and the open sea of the Wash. Before the great embankments of the 17th and 18th centuries, the village lay on a low ridge of silt, one of the very few places where people could live safely above the tides. To the Romans, it was already valuable. A major salt works lay just to the north, and a Roman bank, still visible today, ran close by. When the sea finally retreated for good, the land that was left behind became some of the richest arable soil in England. By the 13th century, the twin villages of Terrington St Clement and Terrington St John were among the wealthiest wool parishes in Norfolk. Sheep grazed the endless summer pastures of the marsh, and the great wool merchants of Lynn, now King's Lynn, grew fat on the trade. It was this wealth that paid for the colossal church that still dominates the flat horizon. The first church on the site was probably a Saxon timber building. Fragments of its stone successor, a modest Norman structure, can still be seen reused in the walls near the high altar. But in 1342, everything changed. Edmund Gonville, a local man who had risen to become rector of Terrington, decided to rebuild the church on a scale that would proclaim the parish's riches and his own ambition. Gonville was no ordinary priest. In 1348, he founded Gonville Hall in Cambridge, which was later refounded as Gonville and Caius College. He used the same network of masons and money that built the colleges of Cambridge to create something extraordinary in a remote fenland village. Work began with the chancel and the soaring arcades of the nave. The stone, beautiful honey-coloured Barnack rag from the quarries near Peterborough, came up the rivers by barge. When Gonville died in 1351, the work was far from finished, but his will left money to continue it, and over the next 100 years, successive rectors and parishioners kept adding to the great project. What they created is a building that feels almost too large for the village it serves. At 167 feet long, it is the longest parish church in Norfolk. The clerestory windows flood the interior with light. The double hammer-beam roof is carried on stone corbels carved as angels with outspread wings, and the south transept ends in a spectacular 5-storey wall of glass that Pevsner called one of the most glorious displays of perpendicular anywhere. In the late 15th century, the parish embarked on an even more audacious scheme: to tear down the old West End and rebuild the church as a full cruciform cathedral-like structure with a central tower and spire that would have been visible for miles across the fens. Foundations were dug, money raised, and a magnificent detached bell tower begun. Then, probably in the 1520s, the money ran out, or the Reformation made such displays suddenly seem unwise, and the plan was abandoned. The unfinished tower was capped off, and to this day it stands slightly apart from the main body of the church, like a stranded giant. Locals call it the cathedral that never was. The 17th century brought civil war and the draining of the marshes. Adventurers from Lincolnshire and the Low Countries bought up the new land, built the great sea banks, and turned the salt marsh into wheat fields. Terrington grew rich again, this time on corn rather than wool. The church gained a splendid Jacobean pulpit and a rare set of 15th century misericords showing everyday medieval life: a woman beating her husband with a distaff, a fox preaching to geese, and a man pulling a thorn from his foot. By the 19th century, the village had become a quiet agricultural backwater, but the church remained a place of pilgrimage for architects and antiquaries. John Betjeman adored it. Pevsner rhapsodied over it. In the 20th century, the sheer size of the building became a burden. Maintaining a medieval giant in a village of 4,000 people is no small task. but successive generations of villagers have kept it alive. In 2004 to 2007, a £1.2 million restoration repaired the roofs, repointed the stone, and cleaned centuries of fenland grime from the angels on the roof beams. Walk through the churchyard on a winter afternoon, and the silence is almost eerie. The land is so flat, and the church tower seems to float above the fields. On a clear day, you can see the spire of Boston Stump, 30 miles away across the Wash, just as medieval travellers once used St Clement's Tower as their landmark when sailing in from the North Sea. See, this tower as well is also completely freestanding. You can see it's actually completely freestanding from the church itself. It's not been connected, which is cool, but it's interesting. It's like the other church that we saw today. Totally freestanding bell tower, which is quite nice. It's a big old cemetery, isn't it? Oh, this is lovely. That's quite nice. That smells nice too. Bit of a shame we couldn't get into this one. See, look, these are quite nice. It must have been some sort of statue for a saint. These are quite nice. See, again, you can tell that this is completely freestanding bell tower from the church. It's completely... I don't know why it's asking... Okay, why is it asking me to go that way? I don't know, let's try. Let's give it a little try, shall we? Let's give it a try. No. No. That's a hard pass. No, that was a good idea, but that's also a big no.